The call today. This should be a very interesting session today as we talk to some of our most prominent architects in Chattanooga. I want to introduce them while they're with us right now. David Hudson is with Artech. Bob Franklin is with Franklin Associates, and Trey Wheeler is with Tinkerma. And all of these guys, I'm sure you know, have been heavily involved in shaping architecture industry here, and not just in Chattanooga, but across the state, and have been involved with the state association, have been very helpful and friendly to AGC members and us, and we have a great relationship with these guys. So we asked them to come on and talk to us just a little bit about what they've seen in the pipeline on their end. You know, I think there's a lot of concern that we're hearing from some of the members that are pretty busy right now about what might it look like next year. So Arch Willingham just joined us, and I'm sure you all know that Arch is our former chairman and is the current chairman of our Education and Workforce Development Committee, vice mayor of Lookout Mountain, president of Cornerstone, and an adjunct professor at UTC. So Arch is going to be moderating the session for us today. If you have any questions throughout the discussion today, feel free to post those questions in the questions section, and we'll review those after the conversation. So thanks a lot. Arch, you can take it away.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, Arch.
Trey, how's it going?
Good.
I didn't know you were president and vice of Lookout Mountain.
Yep, that and a quarter won't buy you a donut. Bob and I are working on a project up there right now, our town center. So I've talked to, I guess, all three of you individually. So I guess these conversations are kind of for the general public to kind of recap what we have talked about. Just out of curiosity, you know, COVID has affected the joke I keep giving people is they go, hey, you busy? Like we're slammed. But it's like being in an airplane that you know the tanks are not going to stay full forever. What are y'all seeing? What are y'all seeing about how's it affecting your pipeline? Stuff in the works, delays, cancellations, etc. Is your phone lit up like a Christmas tree? Is it like a peach grove and a new moon?
I'm not sure what a peach grove and a new moon looks like.
I don't know. I made it up. It was the cleanest one I could come up with.
I'll start off and just our business has slacked off significantly. We started out the year, our first quarter was our best year ever, probably, or at least since the Great Depression. And about April 1st, end of March, beginning of April, we started getting phone calls and just, I'm putting my project on hold. We're stopping construction. We're doing this. We're going to wait. We're going to see what's happening. And it was sudden and quick, and as now seems to be starting back up a little bit. We're starting to get more positive input just in the last week or so, week to 10 days. I'm getting positive conversations with people.
Bob?
Let me take you off mute. Yeah, it's the same. I mean, for the first month of this stuff, I thought we had avoided the bullet as a whole industry. And then all of a sudden people started calling in and canceling projects or stopping projects. I mean, I shouldn't use names, but the Electric Power Board had a $700,000 bid that they canned, and they've taken money out of it. And, you know, they've got money to spend. Everybody's just gotten very, very, very conservative, especially financial institutions. But again, that's not so much, that was interest rates. A lot of 2 or 3 financial institutions stop their projects because the interest rates are so low but there's no margin for them to make money. So it's hurting their cash flow, and it's all tied together. But at the same time, I think I'm with David. We have multiple people are seeking out proposals. That's the good news. We don't have them, but we're going after them, and that is the good news. Is that there are developers and institutions that I think are thinking there's going to be a competitive bid market on the horizon, and they want to jump on it.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I can pretty much echo what David and Bob have said. When I guess it was late March, early April, pretty much all of our large projects went into a holding pattern. We only had one. We didn't have any stop construction, which was good, and we only had one project that disappeared altogether, and that was a small project over at a university campus because they had to give money back to students, and it was not a big project anyway. And then like Bob and David said, our inquiries are actually up, and there is discussion, at least informal discussion, about the potential for some of our current contracts to restart, which would be wonderful if that happened. And Bob can probably chime in on this too. Bob and I both being involved, and David previously, but right now currently Bob and I are fairly involved with AIA Tennessee and even some national level conference calls and whatnot. And I think we're seeing a little more optimism right now about the future than we were in 2007, 2008, at least that there might be some semblance of a partial recovery faster than happened then, which is somewhat, at least not discouraging, right? But it feels like there's a gap to get us into Q4 probably for this year. And that's kind of what it feels like to me. And the thing that Bob noted about lending institutions, I ran in, I won't name a name, but ran into a significant person that's involved with a significant financial institution that's kind of regional. And he told me, I just ran into him on the street and I started quizzing him. I said, it feels like we've got projects and we've got inquiries, but banks are not lending money. And he said, well, listen, he said, we're still making deals. We're not making deals in every sector. And we might be looking for a little bit more upfront than we were 4 or 5 months ago, but we are still doing deals to a large extent. He said the big problem that he sees with his own financial institution, as well as many others, is they frankly, at this point in time, have no idea what their own portfolios look like, I guess due to all the PPP loans and so forth. And he said this particular bank, they're still closed to the public, but their people are back in the office and actually working quite long hours to try to just figure out where they stand right now.
Mm-hmm. Trey and I have been working on a project over at the Choo Choo in conjunction with Cornerstones for the last couple of months, and renovating the inside of the dome. And we called off the fundraiser on that just because what Trey just alluded to, sending somebody over to call on somebody who, like you said, their portfolio, who knows what it is? Is it great? Is it bad? Turns out it's not as bad as everybody kind of thought it was going to be 8 weeks ago. But soliciting that kind of money is just kind of disingenuous or tough at best right now.
I don't think a good note. Again, Trey and I hear this all the time, and David would know this. The state of Tennessee has very, very, very few capital projects coming out. I mean, they've pretty much put a hold almost on everything, with a few exceptions.
Right.
And that's not a good sign for the economy, in my opinion. So,
well,
I don't know if the county are following suit or not. I don't know.
Yeah, Bob is correct. The good news, well, it's not somewhat encouraging. The state has actually elected to, Bob, it's either 4 projects or 5 projects that they're actually going to bond, which is the first time in quite a long time that Tennessee has bonded projects, which I'm glad they're taking that move. So there is one here in Chattanooga that the House just added to the list. It's about a $21 million project. And then the two great big ones are Amazon and Volkswagen. There was one in Memphis that was, Bob, I don't remember what, a $30 million-ish health science project. And then I think there's one more at the Knoxville campus. So those are the capital projects. Now, with that said, they are still moving forward with a lot of maintenance projects because we do have some people in place in finance and administration, as well as the building commission, that understand that it doesn't make sense to defer maintenance further. So that budget, the maintenance budget, was not impacted as heavily as capital outlay was.
You know, your thoughts in January about your pipeline. I assume y'all were like us, y'all were covered up, turning things down.
Yes.
Fair to state.
That's not true with us. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
We had actually worked ourselves last year. We worked ourselves out of a bunch of big jobs, and we weren't out of work, but we had made up our mind. We didn't see any big jobs on the horizon. But we were going, okay, we just got to make it on a lot of little jobs. So,
you know, in 2008, we all saw the things that it did to our construction industry. On our side, you know, the pipeline for people working, the carpenters, the plumbers, was always dad. Dad was working on the job, and when the kid got to the end of high school, dad talked him into going into business, and that was just kind of the feeder for our trained people. And when 2008 happened and all the dads left, that gave us about a 6-year gap of trained humans. What have y'all seen? What impacts do y'all see?
I think we've got a similar thing, not necessarily dad and kid, but I think in 2007 through 2010, a lot of kids didn't go to architecture school, or when they got out of architecture school, went into a different business. And there seems to be kind of a gap of that age group that's just kind of moving through time, that you can't find somebody that's 30 something years old with a degree that's looking to work in the profession. Would y'all agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, David.
And this, I'm going to ask this question. This is off topic, off of COVID. But one of the things that I've observed as a contractor is that there are less and less young people that can do anything non-electronic. Bob I've never watched you sketch anything, David. And Trey, I've seen you do stuff, but I've watched Bob freehand a ton of stuff. Terry Barker used to be unbelievable, and it was almost artwork. But I've seen a tremendous inability of people getting out of architecture school. You're on a job site and you go, just draw a section. And they go, what? So are y'all seeing that? Is that just anecdotal on our part? They're great with CAD. They're great with Revit. They're great with all that kind of stuff, but just freehanding a small detail, a flashing detail, anything. What are y'all seeing?
I think it's a salient observation. I'm embarrassed to admit.
I would agree.
To me, it's fascinating. If I ask somebody to sketch something up by hand in my office, whether they are young or they are old, they almost refuse. One of my partners likes to sketch by hand, but almost everybody else universally it's just second nature. They're gonna put it on computer. So yeah, I think as a profession, we're getting out of that skill set or that talent or whatever you want to call it. I think the computers are driving that.
I think that's those small details that you really can't do well in Revit, that are the lifeblood of the building. Keeping water out of the building is the single biggest thing to keeping that building around. I think that's a sorely needed skill that I wish somebody would go back into the architecture schools and say, look, Revit's great, but can you take, what is that? What do y'all call it? Trash paper? Take trash paper out and draw me a section on some flashing.
Yeah, I think we would all agree that hand drawing is dying. We don't require younger people to necessarily do the drawing by hand, but we're constantly encouraging that, is to use your hand to think. And the whole idea of the hand being connected to the brain is, it helps me think. There's no way I can think when I'm using a mouse. I can't think the same. So I don't know. There's just a difference of how they view a computer screen.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm a year-old man who's never drawn anything on a computer in my whole life, so I got to use my hands.
Huh.
Well, they won't let me draw on a computer anymore, Bob, because I'm so slow at it. So
What do y'all see with the state projects, city projects with respect to education, colleges, schools, et cetera?
Well, I think I can't really speak to the city or the county right now, just due to current and recent, portfolio and so forth. But at the state level, I think we already touched on it, that very few capital outlay projects. I think there will be some reasonable capital maintenance projects. And as a matter of fact, the first executive subcommittee meeting since the budget passed is occurring literally right now. So I would hope that at least a few of those would start flowing. We're seeing work from Department of the Military right now, kind of across the state. These are smaller and medium-sized projects, not great big ones. The universities do have a certain amount of autonomy in some cases. So for instance, I've heard rumor of a substantial project here in Chattanooga that's almost wholly funded by a donor, and it sounds like that one may still have legs. So there are at least some possibilities out there. But in terms of the budget that Governor Lee published, I guess in early February was the first kind of iteration we saw. That list of capital outlay has been, shot with buckshot a few times over. There are 4 or 5 that are left.
I would say that if it's not previously budgeted, it's probably not on the list for this budget round, whether it be city, county, state. I think everybody's pretty much shut down because of the expense and of dealing with the virus and the unknowns. And it starts at the top. The county's dependent on the state for money, and state's dependent on the feds. And so I think that's part of where the brakes have come on, is that everybody has just said, wait. And I hate to say this, but I think the federal government's going to have to come up with some stimulus type projects to get the logjam to break a little bit.
So we sort of did, Leslie put one of these things on about a week ago with the chamber. And one of the things we talked about was, there are things to this little COVID deal that will affect all of our lives until we get in the pine box. Some things I think will turn out to have been a good thing. I can't tell you how many online restaurant orders I've placed here. And when I first started doing it in mid-March, it was very hit and miss as to whether it worked. And now, if you order an online meal, that dang thing, boom, it's here. It's flawless. So this has gotten the kinks out of online groceries, online restaurant orders, online liquor sales. One of the things that I think that it is a disaster, and I'd be interested to see how it ties in with what y'all are drawing and talking to customers about, is online education. Like Leslie referred to, I'm an adjunct at UTC, and the interaction, me talking to that student out there is one thing, whatever you get out of it. But that student turning and looking at that student and saying, what'd he say? And that student says, he said, blah. They get more out of that interaction than they do anything I'm saying. And I'm hoping that as y'all run into customers in the education system that go, well, hell, we can just do all this stuff online. It's great, because I think it's not. You know, what we're doing right now, this is great, but it's better when we're in person.
The academic clients that I have don't think it's great at all. The teachers are working. The testimony, it's anecdotal, is as a teacher, you actually have to work harder to do it. Again, we're working for 3 or 4 different academic institutions, and they're itching to get back in the classroom. They're not thinking it's working. I don't think they're thinking it's working well at all.
I think that's great. Go ahead, Dave.
I would agree, but at the same time, I think people have learned that you can do things online. I mean, the fact that businesses have been working from home. Our particular business, I think architecture sucks to do remotely because you need to be able to point and that kind of thing. But we were remote for a month and a half, and we figured it out. And that scares me of going forward about people wanting office space. You know, have some businesses figured it out and said, we're just going to work from home. We don't need space. And during all this, I've actually come into contact with other architects across the country that do not have offices and haven't had offices forever. And they all work remotely. And, you know, I can't do it personally, but I think we're going to see a sea change of office use. And I think there will be some educational change, but not quite as much, because I think everybody dislikes it so much. But there's going to be things that you can do remotely that typically in the past we've had classroom space or office space. And I think going forward, new office is probably going to be less. Remodeled offices may be more.
Here's an interesting, and I don't know how universal this is. Kent Parr, who does a blog on floor coverings and stuff, he and I were talking the other day. And anecdotally, here's again another anecdote. I mean, when you think of a call center or an operations center, you picture 100 people, you know, in open office. This is a client who wants to do a call center essentially with 40 people, all enclosed offices. So it is going to be interesting in my mind, and I don't know if we know yet. We don't know yet how that's going to affect. Are we really going to get that defensive and put people back into closed offices when we do have offices? And so that will drive areas up, but then people working from home will drive areas down. I mean, what happens to all that space at Blue Cross that's about to become vacant when 50% of their workforce stays at home permanently or something? I think it was in the paper or something. I mean, that if that's true, that's going to affect the real estate market potentially in a huge way. And I don't know how, but it can't not. So,
is all 3 of y'all's companies back, your staff back working in the office?
We're probably 50-60%.
Same here.
We are 80% as of this week.
What did you get down to? How low did you get in your offices?
Our office, I worked here alone for, I think, 10 or 11 weeks. So one person.
We were 0. I mean, we had people coming in and out all day, pretty much every day, you know, just pick something up or run a print or whatever, but we were 0.
It's funny.
We had 25% that never left, and then everybody, and 75% left almost permanently.
Most of the people on the left side of our building were not here. Most of the people on the right side of the building were here. Rachel's sitting right beside me. I think we worked 6 days a week through the entire thing. We hardly ever left this place. So it's just,
Is that politically left and right or literally left and right?
we're construction people, so there's not a lot of laugh. Over a beer, I'll tell you how many there are.
Commercial versus residential.
Yeah, she just said commercial versus residential, but
Commercial's over there.
you can hear talking in the background. Hospitality, industrial, up, down, neither.
Well, I mean, it's no secret we do a good bit of hospitality work, so it's not good right now at all. However, we did have, we had a call, I think Thursday or Friday, with a not quite a cold call, but almost a cold call, a new to us client who's worked with a previous client kind of thing, and he's of the mindset that, hey, there's no better time to build a brand new hotel because I'll have this thing open right about the time that people are feeling like traveling again. Now he's in a go-to destination, and it's Floridian. It's near the coast and in a nice part of Florida. So that may not be true everywhere, but some people are thinking that way at least, which is a little encouraging. But at the moment, I guess every hospitality project we've got in design is on hold. The ones we have in construction are still moving forward.
My brother works for, what's the name of the place that used to run the Chattanooga Benchmark, maybe? Benchmark Hospitality. My brother works, and he does the IT work for them across the country. And they laid off, I want to say, 1,500 people back in early April. Most of them are hired back. They're slammed. So if that helps any, if it helps just kind of the mood of the people that listen to this thing, they're covered up on all their properties. So that's good.
I'm fascinated. Take the medical. I'm fascinated how this is impacting in a negative way, not necessarily construction and design, but maybe perhaps so. But just, I mean, looking at what Erlanger's going through and others, you would think hospitals would be booming through this, but all the downstream elective surgeries that they had to put on hold have really impacted their profits, which is fascinating to me that a pandemic actually can hurt a hospital, not help a hospital. I don't, again, it's above my pay grade to understand, but.
Well, I think it hurt doctors, just general practitioners. Anecdotal story, my doctor and I did a telehealth visit a few weeks ago, and it consisted of, how you feeling? Good. Any problems? No. Need anything? No. Got a bill for $150. So I think it's almost like they're desperate for any kind of, they're trying to work and they can't because nobody wants to come into their office.
Now I'm going to say this and y'all are going to, oh yeah, sure we do. I've never known any of the 3 of your firms to do tons of industrial work. And maybe you do, but that just doesn't seem to be super high on your list. Have you, the few little industrial work you do, you seen that changing any?
We've done a little bit, Arch. Well, we've done a handful of really big ones, let's put it that way. And we're not seeing any real change either direction out of that market from our perspective, but that's a small percentage of our work.
Bob, David?
We don't really have anything, haven't had anything on the boards that has been affected.
Yeah. Bob?
Kind of same here. Not right now. I couldn't make a comment either way on that one.
Cool. Where do you see this taking new work over renovations? It's kind of what David referred to a while ago, that this may push renovations over new work, or do you think it's flip a coin?
I think it's going to vary substantially per industry sector, right? In addition to hospitality, we do a lot of F&B, food and beverage work, really a fair amount of it. And one of our better repeat clients dropped by last week just to visit for a while, and we were talking, and I said, are we ever going to do a restaurant again without outdoor seating? And he said, not one of mine. He said every single one of them will have substantial outdoor seating. And in fact, he was looking at a significant renovation project, which does not have a significant opportunity for outdoor space. And he's decided to move away from that building and find a different piece of property where he can do a large part of it outdoors. So in that industry, I could see either more, really substantial comprehensive renovation or ground up new construction to accommodate that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But like David was saying with office space, good Lord, who knows?
I think there's opportunity for renovation in existing space to create new space based upon the impacts of the virus. But I don't see speculative office, especially in Chattanooga, being a market for a little while.
So pretend all of us went to Auburn? All four of us?
War Eagle.
Damn, War
I
damn
think-
Eagle.
We really did. I don't know if you planned that.
Wow. So pretend you are a young War Eagle, and you're getting out of architecture school right now. What do you do besides freaking out? What do you do?
I just talked to a young Auburn rural studio architectural graduate who called me, which is smart because I wouldn't have responded otherwise. And I'm going to give her an interview just to be nice, just to meet her, but I said, don't take this wrong, but this is a tough market. I mean, to go out and try to find a job. So we have not laid anybody off at this point. We're sure not looking to employ anybody else. Yeah, until it picks back up. I mean, we're running scared. I'll be honest with you. I feel like there's a big, like Thelma and Louise, and there's this big cliff out in front of us, and we're just all driving our car as fast as we can towards that cliff, and we just hope the edge of that cliff moves. But if it doesn't, we're going to go right off of it. I can't tell you exactly when, but it's going to be sooner than later. So,
how valuable as employers do y'all consider a master's in architecture?
It doesn't matter a bit to me. I look at portfolio and personality.
Yeah, same here.
100%. Of course, we all graduated with a bachelor's of architecture, but I actually believe that's the truth. If you want to go to New York, you need a master's. If you want to go to Charlottesville, I know for a fact you need a master's. If you want to come to Chattanooga or Atlanta or Knoxville or Birmingham, you just need a good Bachelor of Architecture.
Well, and the reason I ask is that in construction management program over there, one of the things that they've always said that is every time our economy is good, the master's program attendants go, and when the economy gets bad, hey, they kind of go there to hide for a while. So if you were an architect getting out, would you just wait it out and get your master's?
Well, Arch, I'll tell you what,
$100,000.
let's say you were doing a 5-year bachelor's of architecture degree and then you had the means to stay in school another year or two. I don't think there's any point in doing a master's of architecture unless you want to go to New York City. However, if you picked up a master's of landscape architecture or interior design or even building science, that starts to be a different story.
Yeah.
Having
Or an MBA.
Or civil engineering. Yeah, something like that.
And Arch, I'll say I came out of school in 1980, which was pretty much the height of Jimmy Carter's recession. And I don't remember what unemployment was, but I remember it was hard to find a job. And I ended up taking a job that I was embarrassed about, but I had to take it. And that was before I had a family or anything. But things turned around, things got better, and I wound up here. And now I wish I'd never taken that damn job. But
Are you talking about working for my Uncle Jim?
no, I never worked for Jim.
Oh, I thought
But
you
you
did.
know, it will change, and that's the only thing I would offer any student is just be patient. The one thing we know is that it will change. We just don't know how, and it will get better.
Cool. You got anything you want to add? No.
Hey,
That's all.
hey, Arch,
Uh-huh.
before you end this, and we may have already discussed this, there's something coming at all of us that I think the architects and the contractors need to know, and Trey can probably talk about it more. Trey, should we bring up Kobe or not?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can. I guess it's a timely thing to do if everybody's got another minute.
Sure.
How many folks do we have? How many folks do we have on the line? Do we know or listening, or do we know?
I think there's 13.
No kidding. Huh.
Hey, let me just kick it off, and then Trey can can clarify what, if I can explain it, and it's understandable, then anybody can understand it. The state of Tennessee on all state work is about to tell architects and contractors and engineers alike that we're going to have to do something called COBE, and right off the top of my head, Trey, it stands for.
You would have to ask me that.
Okay. Let me explain what it is. It's essentially taking every piece of equipment that goes into a building and creating a spreadsheet with all, not just the serial numbers, but it would, for every state building, you take a building on UTC's campus, you're going to have to give it a designation for that building. Then you're going to have to give it the designation for the third floor. Then you have to give it the designation for the mechanical room in the northeast corner on the third floor. Then you're going to have to give it a designation for the piece of equipment. Then you're going to have to give it the serial number. It's going to be a huge amount of data that the state can then go, okay, the chiller is out at Lupton Hall at UTC, and they can type it in and they know exactly what the chiller was, when it was installed, or the damper, or you could get, I'm not sure how far down in the weeds they're talking about taking it, but the light fixtures in a certain room. And it's going to add significant cost, we believe, on the architect's part and the engineer's part and the contractor's part, because we're going to specify a chiller. You're going to substitute a different chiller. Then it gets into, okay, who changes the COBE spreadsheet that we're all living off of. So it's a whole nother layer of coordination that is probably valuable information, but it's not what we're used to doing right now. Trey, did I?
You're on the right track. So it stands for the Construction Operation Building Information Exchange. It's a data format. It's a prescriptive format. And of course, rather than rely on an industry prescriptive format that already exists, the state saw fit to write their own. So it's unique in this case. And in short, what will happen is we'll have a design BIM that, yes, it includes substantially more information than it might have in the past for 99% of our clients. But then you're going to have a new beast out there called the construction BIM. And that's where the general contractor and your subcontractors and suppliers and so forth will have to keep that BIM alive and up to date. So it's not a simple matter of just modifying a spreadsheet, but you'll actually keep the BIM model up to date. So you'll have, it's supposed to be open source, but really I think it's not. And so you'll have a Revit specialist on your job site on any project where these standards are implemented.
So I assume this is only on giant projects, because you still have vast numbers of contractors and subs that email is a challenge.
Yeah, well, it's not just giant projects, Arch. Right now, there have been 2 pilots done in the state, and one of them was the Tennessee School for the Deaf, and I forget which the other one was. Was it the State Museum, perhaps, Bob? I think it was the State Museum. So that the State Museum is a large project. The School for the Deaf was not. I mean, it's medium. It's like $20 million deal. And what we are guessing, this will not be mandatory yet, but it'll be up to each individual state procurement agency to implement it or not. We think, we're pretty sure one of the early adapters will certainly be the UT system, and specifically at the Knoxville campus. We think corrections will jump on it early, and we're not sure who else will or will not. State parks probably don't care. TBR, curiously, probably doesn't care, at least not yet. But the other higher ed institutions probably will.
Well, we will be sending this out to all of our membership, even if they weren't on today. And there's a good chance that they'll take a peek at this at some point. And I just thought this was our best session yet. I thought there's a lot of good information here that people have been curious about, and new information they didn't even know about, like this COVID thing that you're talking about. So I just want to thank all of y'all for being on the call, and Arch for moderating today.
Thanks, guys.
Leslie, Arch, I'll just add, and I don't know if your members know about this, but AIA publishes every month a thing called the Architectural Billings Index. And it's essentially a report of architects' billings and inquiries. And it's probably the best foretelling that you guys have of what's going to be happening 6 months, a year down the road. And if your members don't know about it, I think it's open to the public at aia.org.
It
Oh,
is.
wow. That's great. I hadn't heard of that. So we'll definitely be sharing that with our members too. Well, thanks, guys. Keep up the great work.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you later. Bye.
Wash your
All right.
hands.